to Shameless Feminine Speaks with your host, modern-day shaman and sister to all, Rebecca Haywood, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shameless Feminine Speaks, the only show on LA Talk Radio for all you shamelessly shameless women, men, ladies, and misfits ready for the feminine re-evolution. Yeah, and I'm always joined by my shameless Sheena, my shameless co-host Sheena.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here being shamelessly shameless, but only because we're at LA Talk Radio am I wearing pants.
And she'll be sharing the link live
right
in our Facebook group. I've posted it elsewhere on Facebook, but sometimes that pre-scheduled link doesn't always work properly. So we really encourage you guys to head over to our Facebook group, Shameless Feminine Speaks, because we always get the live link up there. So check that group out. Please join us there. And you can also join in the conversation live there, which is great. Mm-hmm. We love hearing from you. And especially after last week. That was quite the show last week.
Was that a great show last week?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. You love that. I thought you were going to even go off more. I think there'll be a follow-up show, part 2, where you...
yeah, there may be. There was more fire. I kind of toned it back a little.
How come? Don't tone your fire back.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to.
Well, baby steps.
I don't know why you would do that.
Well, it's a big thing. It was a heavy show.
It was a heavy show.
Unmasking the villain and really coming into that acceptance of recognizing how you really are your own greatest villain, and taking responsibility for those voices in your head. I mean, it was a struggle for me in my life, for sure. Like I said, I started out with the villain going, I don't think I have a villain, looking at the archetypes. I don't think I have a villain.
I think good people, we never think we have villains in the beginning. I think it takes us a while to realize that we really have a villain too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, it was a great journey to kind of identify the villain as the thing that I couldn't see, as my shadow, as everything I held in shame. And yet, what I introduced last week was really more the evolution of that, of how, the villain is really the victim's creation, right? And to kind of reframe that for you guys, to kind of relanguage that. Really, it's the villain speaks, right? Those villainous voices that say you can't, that are putting you down, and the victim is the one that agrees, right?
And I have to say, because I have to be the one to say sometimes.
Of course.
Sometimes the villain is just a real nasty, awful person. Sometimes you're not the villain, but you're the villain in the way that you handle it sometimes.
Right.
There is a real villain often too.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Certainly there are real villains in the world, and what we're talking about is that kind of internal dialogue and our relationship with ourselves, which we always say here on Shameless Feminine Speaks, that's the most important relationship you have, is between you and you. And that certainly by owning that relationship between your villain and your victim, it empowers you to break out of that cycle that we were talking about on owning it, where we're kind of over-mothering ourselves and stagnating ourselves into disempowerment and kind of stuck in that rut, whether it's constant processing under the guise of spiritual evolution, or, we're really, really in that place of feeling truly disempowered, kind of stuck with that depression, right? And looking for the way out of it. So by looking across the aisle from your victim and looking at that villain and looking at those villainous voices inside of yourself, I think it's really, of course, I think it's groundbreaking, to really, for a victim to own the villain. Yeah. Because that's the victim, what holds the victim as the victim is, that blaming of the outside world or blaming of the history of her wounds, and that's what holds her there in that victim stance and that victim mentality. And if she can, yes, own her victim, but also own the villain inside of herself, and own those places where she sets up her life to fail, then, that's a huge, huge source of power. I agree. That's back in your hands. Yeah. So, today we're continuing with that, and yet, I really felt like, wow, I want to bring the love, right? I want to bring the love today, because it was a little heavy, you know, and I promise you I'm not rescuing you, even though, you know.
We're not.
Right. But I'm not
Rebecca's
rescuing
all about
you.
the tough love. I'm like, let's just love everybody.
Yeah, I'm not swooping in with the hero here. And yet, you know, there's real true medicine. As I say to my clients and students, just put love in front of it, right? And even scientifically, you know, in terms of kind of reseeding those emotional pathways in the body and kind of unwinding those emotional patterns that we have either created in this lifetime or inherited epigenetically, you know, we can shift those emotional habits by putting positive emotional experiences into the being.
Absolutely.
Right? And, you know, so I was going, okay, well, what are we bringing then? What are we bringing? And this beautiful quote kind of came to me this morning. And, of course, I don't have it written down. But it's something to the effect of she expected beautiful things to come to her. And in all likelihood, that's why they always did.
Nice.
You know, they always came to her. And I love this because, you know, as I was kind of replaying last week's show, I was going, wow, you know, this really sounds like that I was a very defeated victim. And I really wasn't. You know, I really wasn't. That victim was very much alive in me and looking for her nummies. And yet I was fiery all the way through. I wasn't afraid of fear. And the biggest medicine, so I wasn't afraid of fear, and the biggest medicine was this quote that I expected good things. You know, I never stopped believing in love. I never stopped expecting that somehow I was being taken care of. You know, even in the tragedies, even in the traumas, you know, I'm not saying I never interpreted those as like, oh, you know, of course, I was defeated at moments, and yet there was this light in me and this perseverance in me, this resilience, you know, which is, you know, that's what's inside that victim. Once you like reach into her, you will find that resilience. And inside of me was that resilience that, no, I am being taken care of, and there is perfection even in this, you know, even in this, even in this sorrow, even in this pain, there is some kind of perfection, and there is some kind of power, some kind of lesson for me to learn and for me to rise up and be an even stronger version of Rebecca.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, you know, I wanted to review a little bit some of the tools and give you some more tools to identify the villain and the victim. You know, we were really focusing on the victim, and we have been. And, you know, and with good reason, because at the heart of the villain is that victim. And really, you know, if the victim no longer ascribes to the villain, she no longer bows down to the villain, right? No longer gives him the power. She no longer agrees with those voices that say you can't. Then guess what? The villain is vanquished, right? And so, you know, that's why we were really focusing on the victim. And yet, you know, I was going to ask Sheena tonight to also really talk about some of those voices of the villain, because she is like so tapped in to those voices, right?
Sure.
You shared a beautiful post, I think just last week, about, you know, the voices of the narcissist.
Right, what a narcissist says to you.
Yeah. So we're going to visit that because I want to bring more awareness for you, because awareness is the first step, right? We are going to step into the magic, right? We are going to step into the magic, and absolutely all the way throughout, the medicine is like, yeah, just put love in front of it. And yet we do want to be able to catch ourselves in those moments, right? When we are beating ourselves up, when we are believing our internal villain or the villains outside of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? So we need that awareness so that we can catch those moments and know, ooh, we got to amp up the love now, right? So we start with awareness, but we are going to be trading that hat. I promise you, that bowler hat. We are going to be trading for the finest top hat.
Adjust that and then twist your mustache.
Yeah, no, we're going to be ripping off that mustache. We're going to be tossing that bowler hat to the side. And guess what? We're going to be having our magic wand and our top hat full of great expectations.
Beautiful.
Yes, because how we look at the world, right? You said something beautiful last week about once your spiritual story about yourself is that you are a victim, then that's it.
You're a victim.
You're a victim. That's your world. Ooh. And now what you attract to yourself, right? Or what you repel from yourself, right? It's all being dictated by this victim. She's not so powerless after all. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff again, my friends. You're bringing you're re-attracting the villain to you over and over again because you're telling yourself that you're the victim. And sometimes you're trying to be the victor, but you're still being the victim. By everything in your life comes back to this tragedy that happened to you. And everything that you say is about that. Now, when I talk now about surviving a narcissistic relationship, I do that in my work to counsel people. But I don't sit at home all the time, or when I go out with friends now, when I meet new friends, I don't tell that story anymore. If they know that story because they've heard it on the air, well, then that's, that I can't help. But it used to be that was something I felt like I had to tell people the minute I met them. Like, I have to let you know this horrible thing happened to me. Yeah. And I was in essence, Rebecca, branding myself, the victim of Narcissist, with putting the sizzling brand on my cheek. And what happened was a lot more narcissists were like, oh, really? 12 years? Well, let me come on over and eat your soul for a few years.
Yeah.
And so I became an easy mark, because I was being honest about something that had happened to me. And I was telling the truth, not to brand myself as a victim, although I did, but because I felt like this was this horrible thing that I survived, and you should know that this happened. Because that's just me and my Aries wisdom, like, look, this thing happened. But you don't have to always tell that story about yourself over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think there's, an intentional telling of a story, where that story really becomes a story of power and a story that's delivering medicine, right? And bringing awareness for other people, right?
Which this has become now.
Right, exactly. And then there's the other version of telling a story where it is that victim kind of looking for the nummies of pity, or looking to like, well, this is why I am the way I am, right? And, beyond the story that we tell other people, there's also the story that we're telling ourselves. I didn't really talk about it last week, but in part of my, right after being raped at age 15, I really became my greatest perpetrator in that replay, that constant replay. And part of it is, the PTSD response, right? Where we are reliving it, and it's hard to turn off that movie. And yet, even after the PTSD had subsided, I was there retelling that story. And I wasn't just telling the story of the rape, I was telling the story of what happened after the rape, that, the detective lost all the evidence. Oh. I did everything right. I went to the hospital, everything that night. And the detective
That sounds like an on purpose thing.
Yes. Air quotes, big air quotes, lost the evidence.
Yeah.
So, I was devastated. The whole town found out. It was not a private experience. And so on top of myself kind of replaying the stories during and after and before, right? What if I had done something different, right? There was also everybody else's story, even though I wasn't the one telling them, hey, this is what happened to me. It was told to them out of my hands. And this was a small town in Maine, so it was kind of like I was related to half of them.
It's like a Stephen King book.
Yeah, everybody knows you, and it was really tough to override that story and that branding. Right, we really do brand ourselves by the stories that we tell, or the stories that other people are telling about us, if we believe those stories. And it's really challenging when you're trying to break through something, when you're trying to heal from something, when people keep wanting to, put you down or keep you in that victim place or be shaming you. I mean, you wouldn't believe the things that I heard, right? I mean, I was asked, well, you're going to marry him, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My mother went through that.
Yeah. I mean, it was very like what you see in like the terrible Hallmark movies of like, well, what were you wearing? And, all of those things. And she had had sex before, hadn't she? I heard blah, 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 blah. It was awful. So it's really tough when we're in a vulnerable place, to not believe those expectations that other people are putting on us, right? and to even override our own expectations. Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I spoke a little bit last week about the script out there on healing from sexual trauma. And there's so many scripts out there on healing from everything, right? Grief. Here are the 5 or 12 or however many steps, alcoholism, narcissism. There are these steps, which again are expectations. They're meant to be guiding posts, which is wonderful. I'm not saying don't consult those, right? Because they didn't just come out of nowhere. And yet recognize that, again, those are expectations that you're placing on your healing process. And actually, there's, the magic of life is so much bigger than we often are dreaming for ourselves, right? And so, today is about kind of the title. I didn't even say the title, Sabotaging the Sabotage. Okay, Sabotaging the Sabotage. And this is one of the ways that we sabotage ourselves is by the story that we tell, the expectations that we place, right? The subtle expectations and the blatant expectations, right? Of oh yeah, that's never going to happen, right? To the subtle ones, we're oh, I don't know, that's hard. That's hard. Or today's today isn't going to be good. Right? Those little expectations, subtle ones, the big ones that we start painting on our day before we've even, gotten out of bed.
Yeah. Never tell yourself today's not going to be good.
Yeah. Right.
You don't know what today's going to bring.
Yeah.
And if you say that, then today's probably not going to be good.
Right.
And I have a lot of clients that they'll say to me, well, why isn't my narcissist so-and-so, ex so-and-so going away? It's well, because all you do is either fight with this person, right? Argue with them, send them super long emails, or you're constantly thinking about them. So they have so much energy to feed on. So if you're going to, sometimes, you're such a victim that you're projecting, you're have you become like the Godzilla of victims? You've become this super radioactive victim. And and of course, they're never going to go away because you're projecting out at them and giving them so much food and so much energy. Cut it off. Stop being that person. Stop sabotaging yourself.
Yeah, and be mindful of the stories that you're telling yourself and
others.
And don't underestimate the power of rewriting stories. Right, rewriting the story emotionally. Right. You might not be able to change the facts, right? Yeah. And yet you can go back into those moments and rewrite that story emotionally, right? You can go back there to her, curled up on the cold floor, half naked, and go and be there with her and give her what she needed in that moment, that there was no one else there to give. Let her know it's going to be okay. And it will unwind that emotional moment, that emotional story written on your cells. Okay, so so let's come to the awareness piece. Okay, so we really want to. We spoke about the voices of the victim last week. Let's really dive into those voices of the villain.
All right.
Okay, so I wish I had brought some mustaches for us, but you'll just have to imagine them as Sheena speaks these voices.
Because the only thing weirder than us sitting here holding hands all night long would be us sitting here holding hands and with mustaches. That would be completely confusing. They'd be like, who is this really bizarre gay couple? And what are these two men trying to prove to us? They're in drag and they're holding hands and they're talking about villains with their mustaches.
Shameless feminine with the mustache.
Come back and do shameless drag. Okay, so this is the thing that when you're dealing with emotional and spiritual rape, and there are different kinds of rape. And I'm not ever saying that those things are worse than physical rape. I've never been physically raped, but I have been spiritually raped many times. What a villain says is the first thing they want to do is they want to break down everything about you that you know. So they separate you from your own identity and connection to you, this very important connection where your heart is locked into your solar plexus, your heart chakra locked into your solar plexus chakra. And they do that by making you doubt everything you know about you. So you're crazy, you're overreacting. Why are you causing such a fuss? Nobody likes you. I'm the only one that likes you. No one else does. Why would you bring that up when it's over? Oh, are we still on that? Why do you keep bringing things up and making trouble where there's no trouble? Why do you feel everything? You're too emotional. You feel too much. Nobody would be upset about this than you, except for you. It wasn't even that big of a deal, but you're making it a big deal. It's all these things to make you think, well, wait a minute. And am I making this up? Should I not have complained about that? Was it not a great thing? And I think even in many cases of physical rape, maybe not if somebody, jumps out from behind a bush with a knife and rapes you, but I think in a lot of date rape and when it's somebody that you know, that kind of talk makes you start to doubt yourself. Like, this wasn't a big deal. Why are you making a big deal out of this? Why do you have to always make everything such a big deal? Why do you have to make a stink? Why are you dragging other people into this? Why are you causing all this trouble when there doesn't need to be any trouble? And you start to feel like you're the perpetrator. You're the troublemaker. You're the one that causes drama. You're the one that can't let it go. You're the one that feels too much. It's your problem. Mm-hmm. Another person would ride through this and be fine. Why are you not fine with it? Why are you making such a problem? So especially when you're in some kind of a relationship with a person like that, love, family, friendship, lovers, sexual, whatever it is, you start to feel like you're the one who is disappointing that relationship by always being the one causing trouble where there's none. And an empathic person, and many people who've been victimized and have had a hard time getting over it, it's because of their empathy. I always say an empath always says, what did I do? And a narcissist always says, what did you do? So an empath is always taking responsibility. What did I do in this? What did I do wrong? How could I have caused this? As much work as I've done on myself and as far as I have come, my best friends, like Rebecca, will tell you, sometimes we're sitting around over food and I'll say, what did I do? How could I have done this differently? How could I have fixed this? How could I have done this differently? Because we're always trying to take responsibility. Now, it's good to take responsibility, but at some point you need to stop taking responsibility for what you didn't do, because that's how you're sabotaging yourself. Mm-hmm. You're turning the whole situation around to where it was all your fault, because I think sometimes it's easier to blame yourself than it is to just say, look, this such and such did this, and this to me, and this is not okay. Because, in our hearts, I think we don't want to ever think somebody we cared about was bad. We don't want to ever think somebody we cared about did something bad to us. It's easier for us to believe we did something bad to ourselves than it is to believe somebody else did something to us. Mm-hmm. Because then we think, well, what was wrong with me that I got involved with this person in the first place? And clearly this is what this person really is. So we make all kinds of excuses for why it's not that. I have so many clients, I think we talked about this on another show, that'll say, I'm depressed, I lost my job, my hair's falling out, I've gained 200 pounds, and it's all ever since I got into this relationship. And I'll say, well, honey, you need to get out of this relationship. No, it's not her, it's not him. What it is it's me, because you see how, and I'm like, but do you see how it started right when you got into that relationship? But we tend to, as human beings, for the most part, be so hard on ourselves, and we cut everybody else 97 chances. And that's how we sabotage ourselves. We make ourselves responsible for everything. We make ourselves the villain so often, even when we don't mean to be. And in that sense, we are committing a villainy because we're being horrible to ourselves by not standing up for ourselves.
Right. We said it 2 shows ago, where you're owning their shit instead of just your own.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And what we said last week was own your part.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Yes.
Own your part.
Just own what's yours.
And that's it. And so, everything that Sheena just shared, yes, this is invaluable for you in terms of navigating relationships with the outside villains in your world. Mm-hmm. But it's also very valuable to, if you translate everything that she just said, to that internal dialogue, mm-hmm. that relationship with yourself, mm-hmm. between that victim mentality and that villain voice, mm-hmm. right? The bully inside of you, the sabotager inside of you, that voice that, tells you to expect the worst, mm-hmm. right? That voice, right? Everything that she just shared, that relationship is happening inside of you
Absolutely.
as well. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And mm-hmm. you become your own bully, mm-hmm. in the way that sometimes in a situation like, let's say, a father beats a mother and then she'll turn around and beat the kids. Sometimes when a bully, and a narcissist is a bully, mm-hmm. sometimes when a bully is beating you up, instead of you sticking up for yourself, you'll turn around and start beating yourself up. And then you'll become the bully. And you'll beat yourself up for all the things the narcissist is telling you did. Then the narcissist, hits you once, and then you'll turn around and hit yourself twice.
Right.
And instead of sticking up for yourself and saying, no, that's wrong. There's something wrong with you. And I did it in that relationship. I blame myself for, well, it must be me because no one's ever been this angry at me before. So clearly I've done something wrong.
Right. Yeah. And there's a certain charm as well, right? To a villain.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. Or else
it's a sexy mustache,
right? Yeah.
It's and also to what society tells us. You were talking about the things that you went through when you were trying to stand up for yourself after a rape of this small town, and but you had sex, and what were you wearing? Both of the narcissistic relationships that I've had, and I don't talk about the first 1 month, but there was a first one, were with very good-looking people. And sometimes people would come right out to me and say, well, I mean, you're never going to do better than that, so maybe you should just put up with it. This idea that if somebody, I should be so lucky to be with this good-looking person that I should take all their abuse with a smile because, how could I have gotten so lucky?
Yeah.
And I would say, but I'm not lucky. This is a terrible situation. And they would say, well, please, I wouldn't even rock the boat because I'd give anything I'd put up with it all for that. So in society, we tell ourselves and we tell each other things like, if you're a woman, you shouldn't make a stink because nobody will believe you. If you're an overweight person, you should take all the abuse because it's really what you deserve. And we allow ourselves to hear those voices. And like the mother who beats her kid when the husband beats her, we turn around and start beating ourselves up with that same societal malarkey that we're hearing. And then we start repeating it like our mantras.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I want you all to pay attention to, because, I felt it like about halfway in through your sharing. What I want you all to pay attention to is not just noticing the words, okay? So Sheena's identified several different voices of the villain, okay? And really the victim, the villain and the victim in cahoots with each other, right? And so, yes, identify the voices. That's part of the awareness, right? So that you can catch those voices when they're talking in your own mind, or when they're talking to you out in the world. Also, pay attention to the emotion, okay? I could feel it when you're just rambling off, right? And you weren't even being abusive. You weren't believing your words.
No,
and yet
I'm just a good actress.
You can just feel, right, the neurolinguistics of that programming happening, even just with empty words, right, where she's not actually intending for those words to go into you. Now imagine someone intending them to go into you.
Sure.
Or you intending them to go into yourself, you believing those words. And that's really the dynamic at play. We can catch the words, and if we can catch the words before we believe them, right? And that's the thing. We want to stop the belief. And, it's tricky. It's really tricky, and it takes time. It takes practice. It takes a lot of awareness and refrain. We talked about refrain last week. And so it takes time to get to that place where you can catch it. And catch it before you fully believe it, or at least catch yourself believing it. And how you know you're believing a voice in the mind is that you have the emotional reaction, right?
Yes.
Right? If if somebody says something to you that you don't believe, right? Like if you're a beautiful woman and somebody says, well, gee, you're ugly. You know what I mean? Like, and you know yourself to be beautiful, you're not going to believe those words. It's going to be laughable, right? And yet, if you don't believe yourself to be a beautiful woman, then those words are really going to come in, right? If you already believe that you are ugly, those words come in, right? And there's an emotional reaction to that. Oh, I'm not enough, right? You feel smaller. So pay attention to, build your awareness both in terms of the thoughts in your mind, the voices that are speaking in your mind, but also that emotional awareness. I think that was really the greatest tool that I gave myself on my journey. It's kind of Toltec 101, 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz, and yet the emotional component isn't quite highlighted as much as what I actually got from him in person and with my grandmother, Madre Sarita. There was really a presence of and an invitation to notice the emotions, which is why I really teach the emotional presence piece, because it's such a big part of building your awareness and healing, right? Because that's where the belief is, right? That's where the victim is, that's believing those voices of the villain, right? Accepting them to be true. So pay attention to how those voices made you feel, how your voices of the villain make you feel, how other voices of the villain outside make you feel, so that you can, sometimes we're more in tune with what's going on in the mind. Sometimes we're more in tune with what's going on in the body emotionally. And I certainly, my awareness was really strong in my body, a little less so in the mind. I was great in the mind journaling. I could really tap into that. But walking out in the world, I wouldn't necessarily catch what I was saying to myself, but I would catch it emotionally. So either way, wherever you catch it is good enough. And that's that starting point for you to start to know, okay, here's where I put the medicine. Okay, here, now it's time. Okay, we have awareness. We have the refrain, right, where you're doing your best to not believe that thought, to not give that thought any more of a voice, at least not a spoken word, right? At the very least, bite that tongue in a good way, right? And do your best to not believe it so you don't have the emotional reaction, right? That's the refrain, but we're not repressing, right? We're not shaming that emotion. If you have the emotion, allow it to move and unwind, as we've taught you to do here. And yet the next step to the refrain is what I call the reframe, okay? And this is really important. And that reframe is really kind of what we're talking about today with expectations, right? And so we want to reframe that. I've given you, I've spoken before about how I use mantras, right? How I will recognize a belief in my mind that I want to shift. And so I will write that belief down as it is and identify the emotional quality that accompanies it, right? Once it's believed, what does that feel like in my body? And then I write down the mantra for it, okay? And I call it a mantra, really, it's like a new belief, okay? But I write down the mantra for it. And I call it a mantra because to me it's something that I will say even ahead of time, even before I hear that thought or have that emotional reaction. I will say that mantra going into a situation where I know, gee, like I really go into victim with this person. You know, I recognize that. So I'm like fortified with my mantra. And I'm saying that silently to myself, you know, and I even anchor it into my body. You know, I hold it on my heart or I hold it in my belly, wherever I've identified where that emotional reaction that goes with the lie, you know, the belief, wherever that emotional reaction lives in my body, I'll anchor that mantra into that place in my body and really say it to myself. And what's so important about these mantras is, you know, and Betsy Chatsey gave this teaching actually at one of your Raising the Vibration events.
Yeah, my gathering.
And I love this teaching. Betsy, if you're listening, I love you, girl. She gave this teaching about, you know, kind of, I'm going to paraphrase and put it in my own words here. I'm just going to translate her teaching for you for today. And that's basically that let's choose mantras that we actually believe. Okay, sometimes we set, she was talking about personal affirmations, and how we're like, okay, we want to feel beautiful, right? And so we stand in front of the mirror and we like pick this affirmation, like I am beautiful, but we're not believing it yet, right? Because like all we're doing is just kind of like attempting to fake it till we make it, which doesn't quite work because the belief is the power, right? The belief is that power of transformation, right? So let's choose a mantra. Let's choose an affirmation that we can at least kind of get on board with.
Absolutely.
Right? And in her example, she gave, I think, her eyes, where she already did believe that she had beautiful eyes. So in the mirror, she would start with, I have beautiful eyes. And she'd be gazing at herself with her beautiful eyes. And then, oh, well, actually, you know, I really love how my ass is looking today. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm looking good. And that starts to grow inside of you. So choose mantras that you can at least in part get on board with. And those mantras, those new beliefs can start to evolve as you believe more and more. And as your expectation, as that story that you're painting on that mirror of yourself starts to change, right? You reevaluate and create new mantras for yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big, big part of the reframe. Okay. And remember, the reason that we're choosing a mantra we can get on board with is because the belief is the power, which then also creates a different emotional experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, your positive affirmations and mantras are creating the emotional experience of love, of joy, of abundance, you know, feeling that peace, right? Whatever it is that you're seeking to feel, like, you know, find those words that really ground that and bring that and integrate it into your body that you can believe, okay? So reframe, refrain, and then reframe, okay? So another reframe tool, and I mentioned it, I think last week, I don't know when, but it's one that Miguel gave me. Well, actually, do you have anything to say about mantras and positive affirmations in your experience?
I think they're wonderful. I mean, I think there's you can never do too many of them.
Okay.
I think we don't do nearly enough. And I think we don't have enough conversations with ourselves.
Yeah.
Just sit down and have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of this. Before I go to bed every night, before I put my head on the pillow, I say, this was a good day and I did good today, which technically should be I did well today, but I like saying good twice. so that you know, if you can't say that, then say I did the best I could and I had the best day I could, if you can. Because I think it's so important when we go to sleep at night that we wrap the day up in its own little package with its own little bow, and then we know tomorrow is a brand new package that we start building, so that we're not carrying all our stuff from every day into the next day.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful way to start your day. I mean, why not bookend your day?
Yeah.
That way, since we're talking about stories, bookend it. You know, start with those mantras, put them on your mirror, you know. Have them by your bed, you know, that before you even get out of bed, let those be the first words that you speak to yourself. How beautiful is that, right?
This is going to be a great day.
Yeah, this is a great day. I'm going to create magic today.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Beautiful. And reevaluate what you think of as a good day. I mean, if you get to Starbucks and your coffee's the wrong temperature, or somebody cuts you off in traffic, that doesn't make it a bad day. That's just the thing. You should. I mean, I go through a hella lot sometimes between my psychic work and my entertainment work, and still at night I will say, this was a good day and I did well today, and then I'll go to sleep. It's important that you pat yourself on the back and say, you know what, you did good. This is good. You did well. Whatever you want to say it. You know, you got this. We don't say those things to ourselves enough. We're the first person to call everybody we know and say, you got this. But when it comes to us, we're like, meh, you kind of screw up a lot. And we have to stop talking to ourselves in a way that's so much more derogatory than we would say to anybody else we know, even people we don't like that much.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there is a way that you can kind of use that energy of the villain, okay, against the villain, okay, and that is the other reframe that I want to give you for when you're like, God, I'm really struggling with this, like stepping to finding anything I can believe is beautiful about myself as I look in the mirror, right? At the very least, do this for yourself. Doubt the doubt. You know, doubt the doubt. This is when doubt is actually a force of medicine and a force of healing. Doubt that doubt. Doubt the doubt that says you're not beautiful. Doubt the doubt that says I can't. Okay. And then the next step from the reframe, okay, is action. Okay. So doubt the doubt, reframe into beautiful mantras and positive affirmations, bookend your day that way. Prepare yourself for situations that you know you're going into where your victim gets activated or your villain gets activated or you're facing a villain. Then prepare yourself with those mantras. Prepare yourself with that doubt, right? Yeah. And then the final piece is action. Okay, always action. And it's not that these other things aren't action, right? Speaking words is an action. And yet I want you to go out there and take those leaps of faith. Go prove to yourself, yes, I can. Okay, go prove to yourself, yes, I can. Those things that you have been holding away from yourself, that you've been afraid to do, that you've been telling yourself I can't, or that it's too hard, you know, go do them. Go do them. You know, pick something every day, something new, and prove to yourself, yes, I can. You know, you're not feeling beautiful, dress yourself up. Go for it. And I guarantee you will feel beautiful by the end of that experience. I did that for myself today. It was like, I've been kind of slopping around in my jeans and t-shirts the last few days. It's like, I feel like being pretty. So that's what I did, and it feels good. So, do these things not for them, for yourself, right? To start taking those actions. Actions are really, what brings something into manifestation for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's going to start shifting your expectations of the world, because you're going to prove to yourself, yes, I can. Yes, I am. Okay. You're going to prove that to yourself. And little by little, that villain inside of you is going to be vanquished. Okay. The other tool that I want to give you guys today, and this is like pulling this out of the magician's top hat here. Okay. And this tool, I love this tool, and it really lends to what we started the whole show out as usual. Like, Sheena's totally dialed in. She never knows what we're going to talk about until she shows up.
I don't even read it because I don't want to know. I want to be surprised when I get here.
Yeah.
She sends it to me, but I'm like, I don't want to read it. I want to be surprised.
Yeah. And even that is just like
I want to channel the answers.
Yeah. And so, it's the power of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this tool I really found for myself in a moment, I created for myself in a moment of, I was just in full doubt. I had been asked to be a healer at a beautiful Native American celebration. And so I said yes. And I showed up down in Mexico, and I showed up as I was taught, like, in my cut off jeans and a t-shirt, and no bag of tricks with me, because that's how Sarita taught me to heal. Like, you don't really need anything. You don't really need anything to show up, and life will provide. And I stepped into the healing tent, and there were all these very impressive elders with the headgear and the crystals and the prayers and words I couldn't understand, and I was like this little white girl, and I just it was like I only just opened the flap of the tent, and then I was literally backed out, and yet I had awareness, and I caught that voice, of doubt. I caught that feeling of doubt in my body, and I just said, okay, doubt, you want to tell a story? Then let's tell a story together.
Okay.
And I walked my ass up into the desert by myself, found a beautiful rock next to a beautiful cactus, and I sat down and I told the story of Rebecca the healer. Now, how I told that story, it wasn't, me crafting some story. I sat down in meditation and I invited life. I said, show me, because you chose me. You chose me for this path. You chose me for this work. You chose me just to show up here at this event, and show me, Rebecca the healer. And I sat and I closed my eyes, and all of these memories from my life started to flash through like a movie, just rolling through the viewfinder of my mind, from being a young little girl before I ever even reunited with Madre Sarita or met Don Miguel. It was all of those moments of power, all of those moments of Rebecca the healer, talking to trees, healing her friends, healing the plants, writing her poems, which were prayers, which she didn't know, the moment she asked Jesus into her heart with her arms folded, whatever, at this Christian camp that she really didn't want to be at, and she had no investment in Jesus whatsoever. Okay, if Jesus,
you insist,
come into my heart. Woo, in came Jesus. Hello, Jesus. So all of those moments came and showed me Rebecca the healer. They showed me my power. They showed me where, they showed me the evidence. So I call this gathering the evidence, collecting the faith. And when I was done with this exercise, I walked out of that desert feeling 10 feet tall, with nothing to prove, because I just simply was. There was no more doubt. So do this exercise for yourself. If there's any piece, any direction in your life where you really are barricading yourself from success, right, with that doubt, where you're having a really hard time having that faith, whether it's faith in yourself or faith in an outcome, or just faith in spirit, right? Even just faith in spirit. I do this exercise for students that are just kind of lost their faith, lost their, or aren't quite sure. I'm really intrigued by you, Rebecca, but I don't know about all this spiritual woo-woo, and I have them do this exercise, and it's really amazing what comes through. And what is so powerful about it is that we're not just making up a story. The story of your life is being revealed to you through that lens. For me, it was the lens of Rebecca the healer. For you, it might be the lens of like Sheena the abundant, right? Or Sheena the healed, right?
Yeah.
Like, which you are like already rewriting that story.
My Native American name.
Beautifully. Yeah.
Heals herself.
Yeah.
That's my Native American name.
Heals herself. So, take that medicine with you, put it into practice. It's really, really powerful. And all in all, I just want to leave you guys with the message of, expect the best for yourself. Sometimes we're afraid to expect the best.
Yes.
Right? We say, oh, well, I don't want to be disappointed. I'd rather expect the worst and be pleasantly surprised. Really, guess what? You're creating that reality then when you expect the worst, when you expect that life is work and then you die, right?
Well, then life is work and then you die.
Exactly. That's what happens. So be so mindful of your expectations, and especially, if you're not quite clear, take a look at the patterns, right? If you're noticing like, gee, my career really isn't jumping off, right? Isn't taking off. My bank account keeps going back down to zero. My relationships keep failing. Whatever it is, those patterns in your life, put a highlight on them. Turn your attention to them. Turn your awareness to them, and just simply, with everything else, forget everything else that we said. Simply paint a different expectation on them.
Yeah, beautiful.
I guarantee if you do that, your world, your reality will start to shift. Okay, and in general, carry that expectation for goodness, for joy, for beauty, for magic, because magic is real and it is born in a heart that is open to it and who is willing to receive it and co-create it.
Yeah.
So in general, let that expectation, lead with that expectation of magic, of joy, of bliss, of abundance, of beauty, of power, of spirit, of love. And that's what you will see, my friends. You will start to be a magnet for it. I guarantee it.
I love that.
Yeah. So I love you all so much. As always, I am available. I can speak English.
Hey, baby, I'm available.
I'm available. Shall I write my number up on the wall?
Exactly. For a good spiritual time, call.
That's right. Call Rebecca. For private sessions, phone sessions. You don't even have to be in LA. And Sheena's always available for private sessions as well. You can find Sheena at
IamRaisingYourVibration.com and SheenaMetalSpiritual.com. And I teach some great webinars. I've got a wonderful Charged and Blessed crystal collection. And I got all kinds of fun things going on. So come and see me. And I'm a minister, SaturdNightSpiritual.com. That's my interfaith service. Rebecca's been there. It's fun.
It's wonderful. Wonderful. And you can find me at RebeccaHaywood.com and on social media as at Shaman Sister, pretty much everywhere. And we're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. So we'll see you next week, same time at same Bat channel, for more shamelessly shameless medicine and love, all in the name of the feminine re-evolution.
You're listening to Shameless Feminine Speaks with your host, modern-day shaman and sister to all, Rebecca Haywood, right here on LA Talk Radio.